I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
And there came 2 angels to Sodom at even, having lost God someplace after they left Abraham, somewhere between here and the last chapter. And Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, as he did most nights, hoping to pick up a bit of business and guarding against illegal entry within, which was a futile exercise, as everyone did know that when it came to Sodom, most people went in and out of the tradesman's entrance, for the back gates had been smashed in for many years now. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And looking at how the 2 of them were dressed, he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night, for we have heard that this is an all-night party town, and we were hoping to maybe taking a show, visit a few bars, and maybe get to know a few of the locals. For we did hear that there was a place you can go when you're short on your dough. And Lot did say, Oh no, not that one again. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread. For everyone does know that kebabs are best served with pita bread, and they did eat the lot. And Lot did invite them to try a chocolate finger and his cream-filled buns, and afterwards they did have fairy cakes. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter, for they had heard the news that 2 people had turned up who were going to decide if the city was going to get nuked or not. There was even a rumour that these 2 were the ones who were going to do the nuking, and they were both staying at Lot's house. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. Because this particular verse can only be interpreted as the angry mob wanting to bugger the living daylights out of these 2 visitors, and it could not possibly be that they simply wanted to meet, interrogate, or even just discuss the impending doom of their city with these people who had come to pass judgment upon them, as although this entire book will go on to contain the term to know hundreds of times, this is one of those occasional and scarce instances when it definitely, without a doubt, means that someone was going to get raped. And one man in particular, dressed all in black leather, did ask Lot if he knew anyone by the name of John Connor. And Lot went out at the door unto them to ask them to keep the bloody noise down, and shut the door after him, as closing the door is obviously the recommended course of action when facing down a raging mob. However, it is usually best to make sure that when you do close the door, that you are on the opposite side of it to the mob. And he said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly, for surely thou must have something else better to do. Behold now, I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as good in your eyes. For although Lot had lived in Sodom for a great many years, it had not occurred to him that the last thing that a raging mob of screaming queens on a mission to hide the helmet are looking for are a couple of young girls. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And the narrator did resist the urge to point out the double entendre in the last part of that verse, and did most likely fail miserably. And they said, Stand back! And they said again, obviously not talking about the 2 angels as there were 2 of them, This fellow came in to sojourn, and he needs to be a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. For from our point of view thou art harbouring terrorists. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door, which almost sounds as though the crowd were referring to and pressing upon someone else who had also come out to talk to the crowd, even though it appeared that Lot's visitors were still inside, and Lot had gone out to talk to the mob alone. But the men put forth their hand, and pulled Lot into the house to them, leaving the supposed other man that the crowd were referring to and pressing upon still outside, and shut the door, and said unto Lot, Stand aside, citizen, for this is a job for the dynamic duo, Batman and Robin. And Lot did ask them why they had both named themselves after birds, and Batman did point out that a bat is not a bird, but rather something more akin to a mouse with wings. And Lot did ask him if he was sure. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, for they did dish out a great many asses, and distribute black eyes plentifully amongst the crowd, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door, and in many cases their front teeth. And the words thud, wham, and zonk did hang in the air in colourful bubbles, as a jazz band did play up-tempo music. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides, son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city? Bring them out of this place, if they are not out already. For if they are, then maybe write them a letter, and put a second-class stamp on it, when you are warning them. There's no rush. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it, all because of all the homosexuality and gayness. And it has nothing at all to do with their thieving and conniving, and their utter lack of hospitality, their cruelty, and ill treatment of strangers new in their town, as is alluded to in the original Jewish version of this narrative. No, it is definitely because of the gays. Because now, as in many years to come, great disasters will befall mankind, and a great many people will be killed. And it will be all because God is forced, by God only knows, into punishing mankind because of men who will insist on driving the wrong way up a one-way street. And Lot went out, and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters. Presumably, however, not the daughters that he had offered to the angry mob, as they had never known a man, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. For the usual way to deal with silly old bastards who come and tell you that God is coming to destroy you was then, as it will always be, which is to point and laugh. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. The rest of your family, if you have any, whom we urged you to warn last night, as well as all your employees and servants, well, they're going to be toast. And Lot did ask them what the rush was. After all, it was the 2 angels who were going to be responsible for the destruction, and not something like an impending natural disaster over which the angels had no control, so surely they could hang fire for a little while, and wait until he had packed and found somebody to look after the dog while he was away. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters. The Lord had been merciful unto him. And the tall of the 2 men did say, To the Batmobile, Robin, for we have not a second to lose, for the money in the parking meter will soon run out, and it shall be towed away. For this city is not Gotham, and Commissioner Gordon cannot get the parking tickets and speeding fines that we do get in this town cancelled, and they brought him forth, and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, he presumably being one of the angels, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. And Lot said unto them being the angels, Oh, not so, my lord, presumably under the impression that by the end of the 5-word sentence he was speaking directly to God again. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountain, lest some evil take me, and I die. For in any story like this, where something is about to explode in a really, really big way, there always has to be some sort of minor impediment, such as the horse cart not starting, someone having to go back for something, or the main reactor being offline and in need of fixing by the science officer, whatever that is, that will delay the main character's departure until the last minute, so that they get away in the nick of time with only the hairs on their arses being slightly singed. Behold now, said Lot, this city is near to flee into, and it is a little one, sort of like a town or even a village really. Oh, let me escape thither, instead of legging it all the way unto the mountains. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. For though you have the power to apparently do anything that thou dost pleasest, thou dost not apparently havest the power to drop me off out of range of the forthcoming blast. And he said unto him, he being the angel, and him being Lot, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city, for the which thou hast spoken. And though the destruction of this town may have originally been in God's perfect and inerrant plan, a plan which he was under instructions to carry out to the letter, the angel did presume that the Lord wouldn't mind if he made a few changes here and there. Well, for operational reasons. Haste thee, escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou become thither. Which kind of makes one wonder what all of the rush was all about in the first place, other than to add an appearance of urgency to the plot, for surely the Lord could wait until Lot did reach the mountains rather than this small city. Therefore the name of the city was called Zor, which is another one of those words that the translators could just be asked with translating, which means small, and is not in any way a reference to how one's arse would feel when sodomized. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zor, so it can not just have been that much of a run for Lot and his daughters as they set out from Sodom at daybreak, meaning that Zor must surely have not been more than a couple of miles away from Sodom. Then, just as Lot and his family were falling through the gates of Zor, half dead from exhaustion, the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven, pissing on the pride parade that was going on at that particular moment, and forever putting the word flaming into the term flaming faggot. And lo, there were many screaming queens, and as they did look upon the devastation, Robbie did say unto Batman, Holy shit, Batman! And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew upon the ground, in a most awesome display of visual effects that had surely taken half of his budget, and that had to be done in one take, as CGI had not yet been invented. And the whole scene did look us like a giant cardboard-scale model catching fire and being blown up, and the only thing that wasn't missing were puppets dressed in blue uniforms on strings trying to put us out the fire with water squirters. But his wife looked back from behind him, because, like all wives from now until eternity, she was just incapable of following the simplest of instructions, and she became a pillar of salt. And in a scene set far away in the distance to demonstrate the full extent of the destruction from afar, Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord, presumably in the last chapter, for over the years he had stood before the Lord on a great many occasions in a great many places. And he looked towards Sodom and Gomorrah, and towards all the land of the plain, and beheld, and lo, the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And he did say unto himself, Fuckest me! And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham. For having a good memory would be something that would be considered essential when being an all-knowing, and all-powerful, benevolent, and loving God. And he sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt, although he could have probably saved himself a lot of pissing around in the long run if he had just pointed out to Lot, about 6 chapters back, when he was talking to him and Abraham and Lot, and Abraham were discussing going their separate ways, that the bit in which it was stated that the Lord would destroy Sodom was something that Lot really should have paid a little more attention to. And Lot went up out of Zoar, and dwelt in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar. For even though the Lord, or at least his angels, had gone out of their way to save him, and so he could consider himself to be under the Lord's divine protection, and they had clearly stated that the Lord would spare Zoar, Lot wasn't taking any chances. For I guess the inhabitants did not take too kindly to having an associate of those that had just nuked the neighbouring town within their midst, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his 2 daughters. And the firstborn said unto the younger, Our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come in unto us, after the manner of all the earth, aside from maybe all those men in the town just down the hill. Though, then again, going by the standards that Lot, his uncle, Abraham, and the rest of the family did go by, these men must surely be too far distantly related to be suitable, or they are to the kind of daughter that only a father would love, and surely, unlike earlier in this chapter, when the author wasn't entirely clear what the crowd meant by wanting to know those 2 angels, he left no doubt here when he stated that Lot's daughters did want their father to come in them. Come, let us make our father drink wine. For though they were both unable to find a man anywhere, bottles of wine were something that just laid around in great abundance in small caves in the mountains in those days, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink wine that night, rather than his usual Bacardi Breezer with a twist of lime, Malibu and Coke with a paper umbrella, or strawberry daiquiri with a sparkler. And the firstborn went in, and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose, for he was truly biblically shit-faced in a way that Noah could only dream of. Either that or the author was just making excuses for Lot, for surely a soldier rarely stands to attention when the general is blind drunk. And it came to pass on the morrow, while Lot was nursing a hangover of the like not previously experienced by a man, while tucking into a greasy bacon sandwich, that the firstborn said unto the younger, Behold, I lay yesternight with my father, and now I do walk like I hath been riding a horse. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and go thou in, and lie with him, that we may preserve seed of our father. Once again, not understanding, mainly because though this book is apparently the source of a great many truths about the universe and the origins of man, God never explains the concept of genetics and how genetic inheritance works, and that they themselves, as the biological offspring of Lot, carry his genetic line down to the next generation without the need to take personal samples as keepsakes. And they made their father drink wine that night also, as he had either obviously not learnt much from the night before, or he had, and he wasn't letting on. And the younger arose and lay with him, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she arose. Well, that was his story at least, and he was sticking to it. Thus were both the daughters of Lot with child by their father, which is a fine turn of events, and puts into context just how immoral those who did live in Sodom and the cities of the plain must have been, if it should be agreeable with the Lord that the most righteous man of all of them should on occasion get out of his tree and come into his daughters. And the firstborn bare a son, who was also her own brother, well, half-brother at least, and called his name Moab, the same as the father of the Moabites unto this day. And the younger, she also bare a son, and called his name Ben-Ammi. The same is the father of the children of Ammon, unto this day. And they all did live happily ever after, as cave people, all 5 of them. Lot, his 2 daughters, his 2 sons, who were also his grandsons. For at this time there was no such thing as child services, and so the young children were not taken into care. And the Lord, who did sit at twilight upon the hillside overlooking the valley, did look out upon the burning embers of the cities that did reside there, as his two angels, Batman and Robin, did return unto him in the Batmobile. And he did lift his gaze towards the cave that was above the city of Zor, that Lord had made his home. And the Lord, who was all-knowing, aware of everything that had ever happened, was happening, and that could ever happen, regardless of if it ever does or not, did know in his heart that the book that would one day be known as a dictionary had not yet been written. But some day it would be, and that when that day did come, he would inquire within upon the meaning of the words righteous and virtuous, and see if the definitions given therein included getting shit-faced and knocking up your daughters, and if it was possible to apply such words to someone such as Lot and his daughters in any way other than by mistake. And when the two angels did reach him, he did turn unto them, and say, You were only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.